Thomas and Percy are good friends, but sometimes Percy teases Thomas about being frightened, and he doesn't like that at all. One evening, he was dozing happily, but Percy wanted to talk.
Oh, it was more than just wanting to talk. What Percy was actually doing was bothering Thomas. More specifically, jabbing him about when he played a ghost in Season 2's Ghost Train. I would like to know why Percy is still talking about this. He already got made fun of in return an episode after in Woolly Bear. Percy must really find this to be a high point in his career. Obviously, Thomas did not.
I hope the guard leaves the light on for you tonight. Why? Asked Thomas. I quite like the dark. Oh, really? Exclaimed Percy. I am surprised. I always thought you were afraid of the dark. I wonder why.
Yes, do wonder why, Percy, because that is clearly a false claim on your part. So far in any of the episodes looked at, Thomas has not been frightened of a dark setting. It was only Percy's ghost trick that made him flake out. The next morning, Sir Topham Hatt visited Thomas with some big news. According to him, an item was needed to be brought out of Knapford Harbor, but he wouldn't tell Thomas what it was. At that same time, Percy was in Lower Sudbury getting into a siding to let Henry go by. This, however, ended up causing a problem after Henry was out of the way.
The switches are jammed, called the signalman. I can't switch them back for Percy. The workmen will have to mend them in the morning. I'm sorry, Percy, but you'll have to stay here for the night. Where are you going? Asked Percy. Home for tea, replied the fireman. Percy was speechless.
Did you really think your crew was going to hang around with you, Percy? Unless they kept your fire going unmonitored, which is quite hazardous, I might add, there would be nowhere for them to stay except your cab. And that would be very uncomfortable compared to being home. Now, if you were a luxury engine, or at the very least had an enclosed cab, then maybe. It's also a good thing, though, that Percy has a train that apparently isn't that necessary to get around. Otherwise, Top Hat, I'm sure, would be making a fuss over the fact that he's nowhere to be found. As night rolled around, though, Percy began to show his true colors.
Oh dear, he murmured. It's very dark. Oh, what's that? It was only an owl, but Percy didn't realize this.
Yeah, so really Percy was actually more yellow than green right now because he was more concerned than comfortable. What happened to him being all confident in the Ghost Train episode? In that entry, it was told that Percy enjoyed the dark. Is an owl going to be the undoing of Percy? Seems like it. Simultaneously, at Knapford Harbor, Thomas was picking up his big delivery. And when he got it, he was about as shocked as anyone else would be since it has never been on Sodor before. And neither has this particular shot of Knapford Harbor been shown either.
Cinders and ashes, cried Thomas. It's a dragon. Don't worry, laughed his driver. This dragon is made of paper. It's for the carnival tomorrow.
And of all the rolling stock vehicles to famously be featured in many toy catalogs, I can say this was like top of the list. Annie, Clarabelle, troublesome trucks, and express coaches by this time were already around. But after this, the Chinese Dragon had then became a major centerpiece for Thomas fans to own. Once the Dragon was all set on a flatbed, Thomas set out on his journey. And with the Dragon being the only object with bright lights all over it, it was certainly going to be something that could freak someone out. The one right in line for that was Percy, who was no longer awake.
Percy woke up with a start.
Damn right it did. If you were to wake up with a giant next to you with a crazy face like that, I'm sure it would make anyone jump. Percy even publicly declared out loud to the world he was not opening his eyes until his driver came. The good thing is, Thomas's surprise was not intentional. There was no way he could have known Percy was stuck in a siding in Lower Sudbury. It just happened to be how the universe worked that night, i.e. a Gordonism moment again. And like usual, news spread around unforgivably, and it came back to haunt Percy even more, of which was done by his own doing because he first told Gordon, who thought he had one too many screws loose. After being jabbed by others, Percy began doubting himself. That is, until some time later.
Help! Save me! Cried Percy. It's all right, whistled Thomas, and he explained about the carnival. By the way, how was your night out? Percy decided to tell Thomas the truth. Well, Percy, said Thomas, maybe we do get scared sometimes, but if we're not afraid to tell each other, then that means we're quite brave, too.
Okay, well, at least that has been reconciled. It's nice that Percy was able to recognize his fault, although he got a lot of blowback for talking about a dragon he did see. This episode was decent. It may have contained a bit of the Gordonism formula, but it was written so in a way that didn't feel as plainly set up as some other episodes have done. If the switches had malfunctioned at the siding, then Percy may never have had the chance of being scared out of his wits. The timing was right for him to learn this lesson, though. And as mentioned before, the fact that Thomas scared Percy unintentionally was a good part of the writing. If Thomas did plan it, then who knows? These two might be at each other's funnels again like they were in the first episode of Season 2. Music to this episode was memorable for a completely different reason than one might expect. Throughout the story, there are moments that use Percy's cue, but at a slower pace and in other keys. Really, though, the standout motif is for the Chinese dragon. Again, after this episode aired, the Chinese dragon was in all the merchandise. The music and the story to this one really made it impact. The locations displayed is another great component. Knapford Station and Tidmouth Sheds are shown briefly. We also get to revisit Ellsbridge Station. The new scenery we haven't seen yet is the Lower Sudbury shunting yards and the loading docks at Knapford Harbor. Oh, and we did see the Valley Bridge, but with a new angle, and it definitely adds some depth to the view for sure. Next episode is Diesel Does It Again. Thanks for watching.